After 24 games in Korean Challenger, Faker has an 83% win rate on Vex. Even for the best players in the world, making the game look this easy is just a dream. So in today's video, we are going to be watching a game of Faker absolutely stomping mid and hard carrying on one of the most banned champs on the Rift. Now, it's not because the champion is insanely broken. I mean, the Kadeems at Pro Guides had Vex in their top 10 worst champions, and it's not because of jungle diff, even though lots of us think it is. It's really because of two reasons. Faker knows how to play mid and feels natural when he plays Vex. You know, something just clicks. He's at one with the champion. So in the next 10 minutes, you will know exactly what Faker does to ensure he wins mid every single game. And even if you don't play Vex or even mid lane, these concepts are critical to becoming a challenger laner. And just before we do get into these insane tips, we have so many videos just like this one uploaded to our website on a daily basis for our subscribers. Our vids are made by the elite challenger players and coaches around the world, so get that exclusive access by signing up for a bit more jizz. And let's get into it. Now, one of the most common mistakes low elo players make is that they use their abilities to farm minions. Like, how many of us would have E'd these two melee minions? But we always have to ask ourselves, what is the cost to an action? So by E'ing the minions, we don't have it to damage our opponent Yone, who is the most important detail in this lane. In other words, we would be letting him off the hook because we have less pressure in the lane. So Faker said screw that and lands his Looming Darkness onto the Yone instead, and auto attacks him a couple of times to proc electrocute, then he immediately backs off. Now, why does he do this? Well, there are three reasons. At the moment, Vex is just auto attack Vex. Without her abilities, she obviously isn't as strong, so potentially trading auto attacks with a Yone would be pretty troll. Now, the red minions are also attacking Faker, and finally, Yone has his whirlwind ready to use in a couple of seconds. So when you are interacting with the enemy champion, you have to consider their cooldowns, your cooldowns, and the minions. So by backing off, Faker is able to de-aggro the enemy minions, and then he does something that every GOAT mid laner does. He positions Vex almost parallel with his furthest minion. And against melee champions, when your minion wave is pushing towards your opponent, you must do this. The reason for this is because it prevents Yone from making contact with the wave, because your reach in the lane, or the scope of your auto attacks and abilities, is huge. As soon as Yone moves up to try last hit a minion, Faker is in a position to take some juicy HP. This will force Yone to give up minions. So it's never just about you gaining gold, it's also about denying your opponent from doing the same thing, which to be honest is just more powerful. Now Faker hits level 2 and begins to venture beyond the minion wave collision. Now this looks risky at first, but it goes back to that idea of reaching as far as possible in the lane, and you can really extend that reach when you have a level advantage, especially in the early game. Now Yone here is too busy subscribing to our YouTube channel, which you should do as well, so Faker auto attacks him, but then thinks to himself, this dude is disconnected. So Gentleman Faker backs off to give Yone a chance to come back. Now in your games, if your opponent disconnects, kill them. Now when Yone starts moving again, Faker is in range because he moved beyond the minion wave to synergize his abilities. So he skills his Q, lands his E, which fears Yone because Vex had her passive stacked, and finishes the combo with a guaranteed Q. Now lots of players, when they hit level 2, will use one ability and then the other 3 seconds later. It's a lot more efficient and dangerous for your opponent when you use your skills together. Now after you do this, you never want to miss CS that is free unless your opponent runs it down. So Faker last hits the minions, but notice where he is last hitting these from, as close to Yone's side of the lane as possible. So he is still maintaining that pressure and saying, bro, if you move up, I've got some damage coming your way. Now this wave eventually pushes into Yone, and Faker, because he has a bit of free time before the next wave gets into lane, moves toward the enemy Raptor camp. But so many players, what they'll do is they will ward just over this wall, so you can see the Raptor camp. But what about when the enemy jungler finishes their red buff? You can't see this choke point, and they can evade your vision and still gank mid. This is why Faker wards to the left of this wall, so he can still see the Raptor camp, but also any potential ganks. This is something you can obviously do yourself, but make sure to do this when you are not going to miss minions. Now Faker returns and assumes control back of the lane simply by standing almost in line with his furthest minions. Now unfortunately here he misses Yone with his E because he's not signed up to our website, and also uses his Q when Yone has his shield from his W up. This is actually not that great because Faker is wasting the damage of one of his abilities, so what he should really do is wait for the shield to expire and then use his Q. This would hit Yone where it hurts. But during this trade, Faker weaves in 4 auto attacks, and this really is his saving grace. So on lots of range mages, most of your damage, funnily enough, against short range champions is going to come from your autos. So almost think of your auto attacks as abilities in themselves. They deal damage, have a certain range, and also have a cooldown. So when you can attack the enemy champion, why not in situations like these? Now shortly after this, look who we see on the minimap. Here comes the 8-legged freak, and this vision is all thanks to Faker's ward timing and ward positioning from earlier. Now Faker immediately adapts his positioning positioning in this lane according to the side of the map the enemy Elise is on. And because Elise is on the top side of the map, Faker starts to hug the bottom side of the mid lane. This creates as much space as possible from the enemy jungler, so even if Faker was to get ganked, he has time to react. Now very soon Faker is going to pick up a kill, but not actually in the mid lane. So to set this up, he pushes his wave, but look at the enemy Jace and Elise. They overextend so far and Faker can teleport to one of these blue minions, the Trinket and the Tribush, but he obviously does not want to get interrupted or damaged by Yone prior to doing this. So he retreats all the way back to his tower and then TPs and picks off Elise. Now you might be like, why would Faker TP there just for one kill or an assist? Well, the question again is, what is the cost? So Yone might freeze the mid wave, but Faker can always unfreeze it with Vex's wave clear when he returns, and sacrificing a little bit of gold and experience in your lane to secure an almost guaranteed kill elsewhere is always going to be worth. Now thankfully Yone does not shove this wave quick enough, so after killing Elise, Faker can actually just run back to the mid lane and collect the leftover red minions. But this is quite risky because Yone has teleport, and Faker could have recalled, spent that extra gold, and returned without missing all that much. But the reason Faker staying here is justified is because his jungler is on the map and active. So if Yone was to teleport back to lane with an item advantage, Faker can actually bait the Yone for Gragas to come and gank mid. Now knowing Yone is probably going to recall here, Faker does a nasty little trick all of you should be doing, looking to stop the enemy's recall. Now why is this so important? Because it affects their tempo, and even if Faker doesn't stop Yone's recall, he acquires information on his opponent which he can then use to make the optimal decision for himself. Now Yone does eventually recall and Faker decides to slow push this wave so he can build a big minion advantage. But again, it's important when you have your trinket available to try to place it without missing minions and to place it in a popular ganking location. So because Faker already has the enemy Raptor brush control warded, there is no real point in warding the top side of the map. So he ventures towards the dragon and wards his red buff jungle entrance. This covers both sides of the map and returns to mid to harmonize his abilities once more. We can see the Yone is moving towards these two minions that are last hittable. So Faker is predicting this, is able to land his Q as a result, and auto attacks to proc electrocute, perfect. But Faker is actually going to die in the next 30 seconds, and it really begins with how he trades in this position. So watch this. Yone is not looking to last hit anything. He is fully mobile with all of his cooldowns and attention on Faker, and Faker moves up to try to E his opponent, and because Yone is fully focused on Vex here, he E's to evade Faker's E very clean and gets in a pretty scary trade that brings Faker pretty low. Had Faker just held on to his E until Yone was degreed for a minion, no way he loses this much HP. And all of a sudden, the enemy Elise appears on Faker's ward bot side, and even though the unkillable Demon King gets pinged by a teammate to be careful, he gets caught out. Now the only reason Faker should be pushed this far up when Elise is nearby is because Gragas is ready to counter gank, but even though he is kinda close to the mid lane, the Rabble Rouser is still a good 3 or so seconds away. And this, as you can see, is not enough time to save Faker from hitting the deck. So even though Faker has played almost perfectly, all you need is one big mistake. But he is still ahead of Yone and he still ends up hard carrying this game. And these clips you are about to see go to show how effective Vex can be in skirmishing and team fighting situations. So let's try to figure out where this 83% win rate of Faker's really comes from. And if you are enjoying these informative videos, let us know by leaving a like down below. Now your W is the most consistent ability to proc your passive sphere because it's instant. So when Elise gets within range of Faker, he immediately presses W, which fears Elise and enables Faker to combine this with his E and Q. Now Elise gets chunked and dies, and you can see Vex's passive recharging and it turns red. Now this signals that Faker's next basic ability, so QWE, will fear the enemy hit, and he is able to land a beautiful Q onto Jace, and blue team managed to pick up another kill. Now in this situation, Faker is going to teleport behind the Jace top lane, kind of similar to the first kill we looked at. Now when he TPs, he just sprints at Jace and waits until Jace is going to jump onto him before using his W. That is so clean. He waits for Jace to make the first move, and because he knows he will instantly fear him, it actually stops Jace in his Q's animation, and that's a free kill. Then if we skip ahead to this clip, you're going to see how useful Vex is when her team has the CC for her, because you can chain that hard CC. So the enemy Ezreal is getting knocked up and Yasuo ulted, so all Faker has to do is come in, land his W, Ezreal gets feared, and it's another 100% kill. And with this build on your screen now with Everfrost, it just makes Vex such an annoying champion to dive into. So when this Elise jumps in, Faker, even though he doesn't have his passive stacked, he does have Everfrost active, and this roots the Elise, and this enables Faker and his team to deal damage to this immobilized champion. But what about if you actually have to be the one engaging in these team fights? Well, because of Vex's ultimate, it gives us such good range and then mobility. So when Faker uses his ultimate on the enemy Ezreal here, he's able to jump onto the Ezreal and instantly fear him with his W. W because he already has his passive stack. This leads into a guaranteed kill, so even though Faker isn't going the Luden's Tempest and full damage build, even with Everfrost you still have enough damage to obliterate these enemy squishies. And the final deciding fight of this game comes in the top side of the map here. So Faker, even though he misses his Everfrost, and oh my god, he got at least cocooned, but he beautifully dodges Ezreal's ultimate, and exactly the same mechanic here. When Jace is charging up that hammer form Q, Faker is able to W to interrupt that animation so he doesn't get hit by the damage and the slow, and then he snipes Ezreal over the wall, and the blue team completely own in this fight, and this ends up sealing the victory. So really clean laning phase by Faker, and the end team fights and the skirmishing just go to show why this dude has an 83% win rate on Vex and why she is such a good champion. And to make sure you don't miss any of our future daily uploads where we might do high elo fun analyses, inform you on all the preseason updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the Cheers.